Good afternoon, another King Don Ramble, and today we're going to talk a little bit about politics and my opinion of the voting system that we have in my province and in many places in North America. We use a system called first past the post. We just recently had an election here, and the candidates in our riding, four of them, ran. Some of them really great campaigns. Some of them, I don't even know how they even got one vote, never mind second place. But that's a whole other discussion. But I made the observation that the winning candidate won on a technicality. And people are forever trying to convince me that no, she didn't win on a technicality. She won fair and square. And trying to convince me on how first past the post works. And I know that. I'm 47 years old. I know how first past the post works. I've known it since I was in grade school when I taught it in social sciences, social studies. Okay, I'm not an idiot, and I do wish people who are in parties and things would quit trying to treat other people as if they are less educated than they are because they belong to that party. So if you don't know how first past the post works, it is the person with the most votes wins. And it was originally established when you had Party A and Party B running against each other. The person with 50% plus one won the election. First past the post. The post was the 50% mark. Right? You pass that halfway mark, you won the election. The problem is we don't have two-party systems. We have multiple party systems. And so first past the post, in ideology, in practicality with multiple parties, changes every candidate. So you have candidate A, candidate B, candidate C, candidate D. Candidate A is running against B, C, and D, and candidate B is running against A, C, D, etc., etc., etc. Each candidate would be side A, and the rest of the candidates would be side B. And in theory, if one candidate got 50% of the vote plus one, they pass the post and they should win. But what happens quite often is people win on a technicality. And that technicality is based on the two-party platform. The person with the most votes would pass the 50% plus one and win. The technicality is the person with the most votes in front of them wins. And so it is totally possible that a person can win and not pass the post. That's the technicality when you run more than two parties in first past the post system. So please, if you're one of those people that argue that your candidate won fair and square at 45% of the vote, no, they won on a technicality because 55% of the people running voted against you. And in theory, people will say, well, what should happen is we should change how we do our electoral system and create different systems. Have two candidates run instead of one or whatever. And I will discuss that in another vote because I do think that each riding should have two candidates running. But I also think that we need to change how we do the vote. So here's what I say. And I know some people are going to go, oh, no, 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 no. But I do believe this. In our riding, you have a candidate who did not get most of the votes. None of the candidates got most of the votes. And so many people will say, well, the person with the least amount of votes should have their votes taken and distributed amongst the other candidates. A ranked system, if you will. Right? Round two, you take all of the votes for that, the 250 votes for that one person, give them to the other candidates as people rank the system for round two until somebody actually passed the post. Right? I think a difference. What people have shown is this candidate here did not get half the votes and everybody else got a half the votes. That candidate should be eliminated and her votes given to the rest until we get genuine first past the post. But we could argue that because that halfway post is so close, we do round one, and it probably would have gone to round two, and it probably would have meant that the second place winner won instead of coming second place by a landslide, because they would have got 55% of the vote by round three. It would have taken 3 rounds. We would have had a different outcome, not one that I would have been happy with either. Right? People are going to say, you're not happy with the candidate. I'm not happy with most of the candidates. Well, I went into this election saying I'm not voting for Party A, Party B, or Party C. Well, actually, I went in going, I'm not voting for Party A or Party B. May possibly vote for Party C if they present a candidate, because I'm not voting for the NDP or the United Party. That was a political party that we had on the Conservative side, because I believe 95% of the problems in the province stem from the NDP and the United Party governments over the long term. And I believe the solutions are very simple to many of the problems, can be done in a policy change on the first day of office. Okay? And so when I look at the candidates, I'm not going to vote for those two parties. So the United Party backed out of the race, and Swoop said, let's throw our support behind the Conservative Party. Some candidates weren't accepted by the Conservative Party, so they ran as independents. And I wasn't convinced that those independent candidates were truly independent and that the United Party had actually folded, because I watched the press release. And at no time in the press release did it say we're folding the party. They pulled their support behind candidates, canceled their run, basically. They didn't fold the party. Media outlets jumped on this, the party's folded, the party's still there. And so I wasn't convinced that the United candidates that weren't picked up by the Conservatives weren't going to win. All right, I believed that they would. I actually believed that the independent candidate was going to be the one that won, even though that's not the one who I voted for. But I believe that if a bunch of these United candidates, who I actually thought would have been won, I thought it would have been an NDP, United, Conservative, Green Legislative Assembly. But I believe that if these independents that used to be United won, they would go into Victoria and put their names down as United and revive the party again. Right? And so in the next election, we'd be basically back in the same round. NDP, United, Conservatives, Greens, down the line. And so I took that approach. I'm not voting for the NDP. I believe they're the reason for the problem. For example, they preach that they're going to fix healthcare. They've had 7 years to fix healthcare, but they had 4 years with our local riding rep. And we have, when she came in, we had 2 walk-in clinics, and they brought in this primary care clinic that's government run, government funded. Yay, both the walk-in clinics closed. Now you're going to tell me you're going to fix the problem? You had 4 years to fix healthcare in my riding, and you made it worse. And so I'm not even going to consider you as a candidate if you can't even tell the truth. You can't even stand in front of people and say, I'm sorry that our walk-in clinics closed because I didn't properly advocate for you. We now only have 1 clinic. You have to leave the riding to go see a doctor if you don't have one or can't get in on that day's call. And you have to wait now for another year like that. And I apologize. The bureaucracy has let you down. And it was on my watch. And I need to apologize for that. She never did that. She preached the party line. Totally eliminated my vote. Had she even considered making apologies for the failure of her party, she might have actually got it. Right? Because I refused to vote for the NDP. I refused for parties that are causing the problem. And she advocated, we're going to fix the problem that we created. You're dumb. I'm sorry. You don't deserve a vote. But you got 45% of them. So I guess you technically won. Right? You technically won. You didn't win fair and square. your party faithful needs to stop making that claim. And you need to stand up and say to your party faithful publicly, look, we need to do some work here, because most of the people are not happy with how I ran things, and rightfully so. Costs are up. Healthcare is down. There's craziness all around. So that's what I believe. You want a better system, we need to rank our ballots so that people who run, right? So it eventually becomes two parties. One of them will pass that post, and we need to make it legitimately a pass-the-post system and not who gets the most votes in front of them. It should literally be, the first person past that halfway post. Okay? Any other debate on this is just going to fall on deaf ears. I'm not going to entertain it because I think it's silliness. Better idea would be to take, for an example, the Vernon Lumbee riding and the Salmon Arm Shuswap riding, combine them together and have two candidates run. Present to Ottawa or to Victoria. That's right. So that you have, two. You're not represented by one party. Both parties would then have to come to the table, sit at the table. I believe in mandatory 4-year terms, right? John Rustard says he's going to look for the first available opportunity to bring down the government. I think the Greens will prop up the NDP. I think you're going to have a hard time unless you do a very big no-no to the Greens. You're not bringing the government down soon. And I think I don't believe in this confidence. I think the government that's elected should be required to sit for the 4-year terms. If EB doesn't think he or his cabinet can do it, step back, get another leader. But I think you should be obliged to hold those 4-year terms. Then you don't have to prop up the government. Because here's something else I think. What used to be a non-confidence vote for, say, something like the budget. If the Conservatives and the Greens got together and voted against the budget, you bring down the government. Because it's a non-confidence. I think if you vote against the budget, then the NDP has to go back to the table and bring out a budget that they're going to get the support on. You shouldn't have to lift up the government. If bills get voted down or certain motions get voted down, that would trigger a non-confidence vote. It should mean you take either that bill falls off the table because it was voted down, or you have to go back and rework, say, the budget, right? So that it's beneficial for all Canadians. I don't believe in partisan politics. I think we should get rid of it. But if we have it, we have to work with it. And I think the policies need to change too, so that if we elect a minority government, they have to fill their term, or they have to resign and create, a by-election. But the NDP party would still, even with a by-election, still be in the office. They would have to work with the other parties to see their motions pass. That would be a better system. You might see more voter turnout if their people's votes would actually count. If my party loses often, am I going to be inclined to vote because my party is not represented? It could create, and does, discourage people from voting. So we need a better system in how we elect people. We need to recognize that first past the post was intended to be, here's the halfway mark, that's the post. You have to cross that post to win. But because we run more than two parties, we create a technicality that says the person with the biggest stack of papers in front of them wins. It's not first past the post. That is not first past the post. That is a technicality. So stop trying to argue first past the post on a technicality. It just makes you look very silly. It makes you look like you can't accept the fact that your leader didn't, your representative, your candidate of choice, they didn't win first past the post. Just because you can't accept that they didn't win first past the post, that they won on a technicality, That's on you. That's not on me. I'm right. You're wrong. Okay? Don't have to like it. That's just the way it is. And before people go, well, if the Conservatives won with the same difference of ballots, you'd have a different opinion. No, my opinion would still have been the same. Most of the people did not vote for the Conservatives. Right? Most of the people voted against the Conservatives. So in theory, most people did not want the NDP. Most of the people did not want the Conservatives. So if we take that, who won? Acton. Acton won. Right? But that's a whole... right? He got most of the non-A and B sides. He got the biggest C. So I think if we took away those top two parties, because most of the people didn't vote for them, most of the people didn't vote for anybody, so maybe we should have a re-election. Because we didn't get that first past the post. And that's where ranked ballots would come in very in handy, is to say, okay, the Libertarians got 250 votes, so let's take their ballots, look at who their second choice would be, give those ballots to the other candidates. Do we have a winner? No, we wouldn't have had a winner with that. You could have taken all the ballots, given it to the Conservatives, they wouldn't have even got a percentage point up. Right? So then we have to look at Acton. Who are the voters for Acton? Were they voting for him because he was an independent? Were they voting for him because he was right of center? Okay? Or were they voting for him because he was Kevin Acton? We don't actually get to see those details in our system. Right? Same as the Conservatives. Did people vote for Dennis because he was Dennis? Or did they vote for him because he was conservative? Or did they vote for him because he wasn't NDP? Best chance to get rid of the NDP, right? And that's another topic. You know, when people are voting, I honestly believe people need to stop voting people out of office. A friend of mine made that post on Facebook not too long ago. Problem with our electoral system is we no longer vote people into office, we vote people out. So we create this, negative split the vote theory. You run more than two parties, you run the chance of splitting the vote. Either way. I believe if the Green Party ran a candidate, they would have split the NDP vote. Enough that the winner might not have won. That it would have actually gone to the Conservatives. Because that's just the way it is. So, I believe people need to start voting on who they feel would be the best representative for their riding, and not who they feel would get rid of the other party. I think you'll see a lot more people voting for parties like the Libertarian Party or the independent parties, because those are the people they want to see in the office. And that should be the way it is. I think you should have to declare that. Hooked up to a lie detector test, are you intending to vote to get a party out or to vote a party in? And if you're intending to vote a party out, your ballot should be sent away. Okay? You should be sent away. I'm not telling you how to vote, and I'm not saying that if you are honestly a conservative, there's a good possibility that if you're honestly a conservative, or you're honestly an NDPer, socialist, or a liberal, or a Green Party, or whatever, your party might actually win. Because most of the people that showed up to the ballot box are saying, this is a party we want ruling over us. That's a hell of a theory, eh? Electing in who's going to rule over you for the next 4 years, not who's going to represent you. And I found that when we do put up a candidate who will represent you, they don't get the votes. People want the kingdom. They run on the kingdom mentality. Who's going to lead over us? Who's going to rule over us? Who's going to run our correction systems and our justice systems and our hospitals and our schools? And that's who we want in power. The person who's got the best plan, if you will, of how to make education better. Right? Or how to make it worse. Right? Or to show that you really don't know. My best one, the best one I ever had, Conservatives ran a platform on improving education. And if you couldn't build a new school, we need to replace portables with modular buildings, modular classrooms. So what they're saying is we need to replace portables with portables, not build more schools, not properly fund education. And they got the votes. Right? A lot of the ridings got significant votes. Good, if the Conservatives won their seat, in a lot of ridings, they won their seat with a considerable margin. Right? Thousands and thousands of votes past the second place winner. Right? We're dealing with a few hundred votes in our riding. I do believe that most of the people spoke loud and clear and said, we do not support the NDP. The problem was they didn't get the consensus as to who that person would be best to represent them. So on a technicality, the person with the most pieces of paper in front won the riding. They didn't win the support. They won the riding on a technicality, only on a technicality. If they want to argue that they won fair and square and first past the post, great, let's argue that. She didn't get to the post. Didn't even come, she's looking at it. Probably can reach out and touch it. So can the second place winner reach out and touch it. She won because she was that much closer to the post. Just a little bit closer to the post than the other candidate. Didn't actually win. Didn't actually cross that post. So if we're going to argue first past the post, then we need to change our system so that we can either do that tiebreaker that says you got to get past that post to win. We got to change our voting system so that we can encourage people to vote. How are we going to do it for a second round? Or do we come back for a second round? Do we come back with, okay, we get that you run, all the candidates have to run except for the lower candidate so that people can do that. I think that's just craziness. That's what would delay the process too long. We need to be able to rank our ballots. Who are we going to put into Victoria? To represent, to give our seat. Which party do we want to give our seat to? Right? I don't know if we. Oh man, sorry guys. I don't know if what we do. Sorry, I know where my thought was. Sorry, but ADD kicked in there. I don't know who voted for Harwinder, and I don't know who voted for the NDP, and I don't know who voted so that they weren't voting Conservative. So I believe that if we had a ranking system, round 2 would have taken the Libertarian votes, my vote, and redistributed it to who else I would have thought. Right? Probably would have voted who would my second guest be? I probably would have voted for Dennis in my second round. Because, well, he was Conservative, and I believe the Conservative to be a hijacked United Party now. He didn't run as a United candidate. Right? He didn't get nominations, seek the nomination to be a United candidate. He was parachuted in by the Conservatives. That's a whole other topic. So it probably would have been there. Kevin lost my vote because he was United. He might be a very great guy, good person, runs a reputable business, sat on municipal and regional council. But he didn't. But he was United, and I believe the United Party gave problems to the NDP, and the NDP carried some of those problems, made them worse or better. That can be discussed later. So he would have probably only got my vote in the third round. And the reason why I say that is because I believe, as I ranted a little bit a minute ago, for example, in the healthcare, in our riding, I believe healthcare is worse than when the MLA went in. And people will say she advocated for us. I don't see it. right? We got the primary care center. Well, that came pretty quick after the election. And so what that tells me is primary care centers were in the works before the election. And the reason why I say that and feel that's more concrete now is because people are saying, well, you can't put in a primary care center like that. It takes time. It's going to take 2 years from the time the clinic closed to the time we get our second primary care center. And that came out at election time. I believe it's an election promise. I'm still not convinced that we're going to see it. Right? Time will tell. We'll see Chris this time next year. They started it. But right now, as we sit today, we're down 2 clinics that were here when the NDP candidate came in. And one of those clinics, the operators were screaming for help to keep it open. And it was like the government wasn't talking. The clinic operators were saying, Interior Health isn't talking, not getting anything from the MLA. The MLA is like, well, I'm advocating. Interior Health is, we haven't heard from them. And so somebody's lying. And based on probability, what does the operator have to lose to say, I'm trying to get help here, trying to keep this open. Government's not helping. Interior Health is not helping. Interior Health is saying, right? Interior Health doesn't have anything to lose to lie. You're not hearing from them. Yeah, you are. Right? Harwinder doesn't have anything to lose by not doing anything. She's still guaranteed her term. And if she's confident, then she would have addressed that. Well, we'll fight for this. Right at the heels of an election. Right before that, those gates open for an election race. Well, we're going to get a new clinic next year. You got to wait another year, but we'll get you another clinic. You lost my vote. You lost my vote because it impacted me. And you're lying to me. You might think you're not. But the track record is, you had 2 clinics. You lost one. You lost the second one. Yeah, we have the one that your party opened, but I'm convinced that it came from United from before, right? That was an Eric Foster project, right? Not a Harwinder project. And if Eric was in office, he would have been in office when it opened. So I believe that, that the time stamps back that up. So that's my opinion, right? That's my rant. You want a better electoral system, we have to have a system that will actually get people past the post, right? And any other system is just not good enough. It's a technicality to say that a person can win based on the most amount of votes, when most of the amount of votes was against that person. Past the post means the center post. You have to pass it. 50% plus 1. Any less is a technicality. 49% of a win would be a technicality because you haven't technically passed the post. Technically, you have to pass the post, not get most of the votes. So we need to change the legislation for a ranked ballot system if we're going to just first past the post. Otherwise, people continue to win on a technicality. They had the most votes sitting in front of them, not necessarily past the post. Thank you very much for listening to me rant. And it wasn't the rant that I was going to talk about today. I'll save that one hopefully for tomorrow. Thank you. Take care.